spent 2 full blocks studying the idea of two-step equations. So I feel as though you should be pretty high level with this at this point, but let's find out. Number 1, what was the equation you wrote? We'll start with Michael, Valerie, Jed Lee. What'd you get?
30m plus 1.
Okay.
30m minus 170.
So pretty much the same thing, Jed Lee. Okay, slightly different. But that's pretty much what we got. 30x or 30n plus 170 equals 380. I don't know why I wrote it that way. Usually I write the 380 on the right. I guess I was feeling strange that day. So, but the symmetric property of equality says that if you have an equation, you can take the entire right side and flip it to the left, and you can take the entire left side and flip it to the right. So, sounds like every volunteer said basically the same thing. Jed Lee, you said 300x. I assume you meant 30? Okay. And then when you solve the equation, what do you get? We'll start with Rashida, Isabella, and then Kiana's.
X equals 7.
Okay?
And
7.
x equals
7. 7 months is correct. Now, reaching back to review, let's see how we're doing with simplifying. Number 2, what did we get? We'll start with Yadesh and then Garian. What'd you get? Okay, what'd you get?
-3x minus 21.
So you both got the same thing. That is correct. -3x minus 21. Number 3, what did you get? We'll start with Sebastian, and then Alex, and then Kivan. Okay. So you got the same thing, Kivan? -2n plus 8. Very, very good. Number 4, what did you get? Got 5, 6 people. Michael, we'll start with you, then back to Isabella, and then back to Rashida. What'd you get? Okay.
-2x minus 2. -2x plus
We have a slight difference of opinion. Is -2x plus 2. So, number 1 was really the overall goal, to be able to apply what we've learned to a real-world scenario. Numbers 2 and 3 were review of ideas you learned in the past. Number 4 is an extension of numbers 2 and 3. I have not taught number 4, but I was pleased to see some people were able to figure out at least something to do. So that's very good. You should have at least tried. And there's one key that you need to know for number 4, and I'll explain that in a moment. But I want to answer your questions first. What do you have questions on? Any of these? We'll start with Caesar and then Michael.
For number 4, I've got 2.
Okay, I'm going to go over number 4. I apologize. Anything for numbers 1, 2, or 3? Anything for numbers 1, 2, or 3? Was it 1, 2, 3? It was number 4? Okay. So let's go over number 4. So, number 4. What if I change the question and I just took that away? What is that an example of? Let's see who can speak in math terms. Gloria? Very good. Outstanding. So that's distributive property. So let's go back to number 2 for a second. Give me a thumbs up if you got number 2 correct. Good. Put your thumbs down. That's a lot of us. So if you can do number 2, then you should be able to do number 4 with one little special part. Not special, but one thing you need to pay attention to is that this is a -2, and that's really -1, so that's going to end up being positive. That's why we ended up with +2. We'll get back to that in a second. So that's distributive property right there. But we do have this So the question is, what do you do first? So it seemed like some people had an instinct about it, so what did you do first?
First I did I used distributive property.
Right.
And then negative 2 times 4x, and then I did negative 2 times negative 1.
Very good. So, you have to do distributive property before you do anything else. That's the basic idea. You didn't know that because I never taught you that. But now I'm introducing the idea and you're going to have to start learning. So when you have a distributive property but then you have other terms outside of the distributive property, you have to add them on afterwards. So that was one little catch. The other catch was, how do I deal with this negative 2 and this? There's a couple of different ways. Rashida just explained that she sees this as a negative 1. So this is really a negative 2 times a negative 1. Now personally that's how I do it. But that's a little bit higher level. So let's forget about that for a moment. You do have to know that this is a negative 2. But let's say that you're stuck with this being a minus sign. Well, we do negative 2 times 4x, that's negative 8x. Minus, and now do negative 2 times 1, we get negative 2. So what's the issue here that we have talked about quite a few times? Valerie?
You can't subtract.
Well, it's not that you can't, but we just don't. You're right, though. We don't write it like that. Yeah, exactly. We don't write this. We don't write minus a negative. What do we write instead? What do we write instead, Brianna? Plus 2. There's two different ways to look at it. You can look at it as keep, change, change. Or you can look at it as add a line, change the sign. Either way, it's negative 8x plus 2. But we have not used the 6x yet. So the 6x is going to come down. And now you see that we have 6x, a negative 8x, and a positive 2. Now combine like terms just like you did here. So if you can be successful on number 3, then you can be successful here as well. Okay? Any questions or comments or concerns? You will see this again. You will see it again today. Any comments or concerns? Okay, any questions on anything? Okay, put your warm up to the side. Today, we're going to go from one-step equations to two-step equations to now multi-step equations. Last time, before I started teaching the last time, I actually talked to you about the fact that we were making a big leap. When we went from one-step equations to two-step, that was a large leap and a very important one. Today, we start the process of just adding small steps beyond that. So the big leap is done. That's why we spent 2 blocks on it. 2 full blocks on two-step equations. Because the concept of a two-step equation is critical. And so I've also been referring to these 2 posters in the back of my room for a while. These 2 here. These questions that I have up here are two-step equations. They're just hidden. And it's our job starting today to learn how to work through the parts that are hiding the two-step equation. So in essence, everything is a two-step equation. We just have to change the way it looks so it becomes a two-step equation. And that's our overall goal today. So we got some key words that we're going to be using. When you have a multi-step equation, we simplify so that the equation looks just like the ones we've been doing for 2 full days. Ax plus b equals c is a two-step equation. So I took your scores and we had a lot of 8s, a lot of 9s, a few 7s, a couple of 6s, but for the most part, my students are level 8 and level 9. So you should be feeling very, very comfortable with any equation that looks like this. Now we're going to add on to that and then learn how to make it look like a two-step equation. So the key word I put in capital letters is simplify. The other word that I use all the time is solve. They don't mean the same thing. A lot of you guys use the word solve all the time, but you're misusing the word. For example, I have students who say, if I give them this question, 2 plus 3, you'll say, oh, do you want me to solve that? Well, actually, that's not solving. That's simplifying. When you take 2 and add it to 3 and rewrite it as 5, that's called simplifying. You're changing the form of it, but it's still the same value. So 2 plus 3, we know, is equal to a value of 5, and then when we add it together, it equals 5. That's called simplifying. We do not solve an equation until it is simplified completely. And so, the key is that once we get it in this form, it only takes 2 steps to solve. So the phrase of the day, simplify, then solve. Simplify, then solve. So I'm going to keep referring back to this phrase of the day, and it's going to become the phrase of the week and the month. Simplify, then solve. It's so important that I put it here over and over and over again. You don't have to copy it over and over and over again, but I wanted you to see it repeatedly because it's so critical to being successful. Simplify, then solve. Simplify, then solve. Does anyone have any questions so far? So we're going to jump right in and get started. So if you already started writing, you can stop, because this is not where I'm starting. You should have noticed that it says example 5. And in fact, I'm not even going to get to example 5 until day 2. So this is our goal, but I would like everyone to take 30 seconds and read this question to themselves.
What is
So I can tell by your reaction that right now it seems like a problem from another planet. But the point is this, is that by day 2 you will be able to solve this. And that's our goal. So I'm showing you up front what our goal is. So we're going to do a bunch of different types of questions along the way. But keep this question in the way back of your mind that that's our goal, to be able to solve something this complex. Okay? But we have to take some smaller steps to get there. So we're going to start here. So now you can pick up your pencil and begin. Example 1. So we have 8z minus 5z plus 16 equals negative 29, and I would like to solve the equation. So I would like to know what z is equal to. Now, here's what I am an expert at, and when I say I'm speaking for you. So this is what we are experts at. It would be great if this was the question. If this was the equation, everyone in the room could solve it. But unfortunately, it's not. Well, if this was the equation, everyone in the room would be able to solve it. No problem. So the question is, how do we get it from this into something that looks more comfortable for us? So the phrase of the day, simplify, then solve. we go side by side. So we're going to start with the left and then we're going to go to the right. So we're going to start out just focusing on the left-hand side, and now we say to ourselves, is there anything on that side that we can simplify? So what do you see? Selena? Okay, what is that called? Very good. Very, very good. So we have like terms. What was the one thing that she misspoke about? She did great, but there was one little detail. Gloria? Yeah, it's negative 5z. And we can see that clearly when we use the bubbling technique. So now we can clearly see the like terms. And then what do we do with the like terms? We've got 8z and negative 5z. What do we get? Just 4 or 5 people? Well, Selena, you're on a roll. Keep going.
3z, you get 3z.
Yeah, you get 3z. So this and this get combined, and we get 3z. The 16 is by itself. There's nothing we can do with it. There's nothing we can do with it, so we just bring it down. We are not allowed to add these together because they're not like terms. They are not like terms. So we took care of the left side. Now let's take care of the right side. What can be simplified over here? Chris? Nothing. It's a number. It's negative 29. There's nothing to do. So that's simplified all the way. So we'll just bring that down. And so we've got equals negative 29. Excuse me. Sorry. And so, like magic, a complex-looking equation becomes a two-step equation. So this was a two-step equation. It was just hidden. Does anyone have any questions on how we got from here to here? Good. Now we just solve. So we draw our t. What's our first step in solving? Notice that I didn't draw the t until we were ready to solve. So what's our first step in solving? Mia? Subtract 16 from both sides. She said that beautifully. It took her 5 words to explain it. This cancels. We're left with 3z equals, what does that come out to? Yadesh? Yeah, it comes out to negative 45. So that was one step, but we know that this is a two-step equation, so what's the second step that we do to solve? Valerie? Divide both sides by 3. This will disappear, and now we just have to do negative 45 divided by 3. What do we get? Isabella? We get z equals negative 15. Does anyone have any questions on how we got from here to here? Now, I feel pretty confident we got the right answer, but I want to be sure. How can I be sure that I got the right solution? How can I be positive? Paige? Yeah. Plug it in, and we have a very bright group of young people here, so we can plug it in and do mental math. You take the negative 15 and plug it into the original equation in both spots. So we can do 8 times negative 15, negative 5 times negative 15, add 16 to it, and see if it comes out to negative 29. And it does. So we know that we got the right answer. So here's the thing, and I'm going to say this again a little bit later. You won't always get the right answer, but you should know if yours is wrong. I did this lesson this morning, and I had students who, during the classwork, they got some questions wrong. And I said to them, well, you should have known it was wrong. I don't necessarily expect you to get the right answer, because you might not know what mistake you made, but you should be able to check and tell whether you got it right. You may not be able to find your mistake throughout your work, but you know if you got the right answer, okay? Comments or questions on part A? Good, we're doing pretty well so far. Let's continue and see if we can continue with positive momentum. Again, the point is that there's a hidden two-step equation in there. It's our job to find it. I would be thrilled if that was the equation, but unfortunately it's not. I would be thrilled if that was the equation, but unfortunately it's not. So how can I get it from this to something that I'm more pleased with or more comfortable with? Lori? Very good. And what are those called again, Gloria? Like terms. You're combining like terms. We've got a positive 7g and a negative 3g. So we combine those two together, and what do we get when we combine them? Jedley? 4g. So this will disappear. These will disappear, and they become 4g. The 14 didn't get used, so we've got 14. And Chris, what can we simplify on the left? Nothing. So it's just 6. How many steps do we have left? How many steps do we have left, Michaela? 2. It's a two-step equation, and you should be feeling really confident at this point. So we draw our t because now we're ready to solve the equation. What's the first step in solving? What's the first step in the solving process? Chanel? Said that beautifully. Subtract 14 from both sides. This will disappear, and we're left with 4g equals what? What are we going to get on the left side? Ezekiel? Close. Negative 8. Very good. And what's our second step that we're going to do? Brianna? Divide both sides by 4. This disappears, and we get g equals what? G equals what? Caesar?
Negative 32.
Division.
Oh, I thought it's negative 2. I knew that.
Okay. It's negative 2. Very good. So now I can double check and make sure I got it right, and this one's even easier. I can say, okay, 7 times negative 2 is a negative 14. So negative 14 and positive 14 are going to cancel each other out. Negative 2 times negative 3 is positive 6, so I know it works. And I'm certain that I got the right solution. So does anyone have any questions on how this was accomplished? So what was the phrase of the day? What was the phrase of the day? Tiamas?
Simplify and then solve.
Simplify, then solve. And that's what we did to get from here to here. We simplified, then we solve. We simplify, then we solve. Does anyone have any questions? Good, let's see how you do on your own. Checkpoint number 1. Got a minute and a half. we get? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 competent people, 11, 12, 13, Kevon, Ezekiel, Michaela, and then Alex. Okay?
Got X equals. I messed up.
Well, how do you know you-
X equals 12.
X equals 12. Okay. 12. What did I say next? Out? X equals 12. So we got a couple people who agree. Someone who said 12 but wasn't confident in their answer at all. Someone who said something different. Briante and then Yadesh.
X equals 12.
More support for the answer of 12. X equals 12. X equals 12.
Wow.
How do you got 13?
Okay, so first let me survey. Give me a thumbs up if you got it correct. Okay, put your thumbs down. Are there any comments or questions on how this was done? Good, so we're going to continue building on the idea that everything is a two-step equation, it's just hidden. So, example 2. -6 times the quantity 2x plus 3 equals 42. Now this, I don't know how to do. But, I know how to do that. So guess what? If you know how to do that, then you know how to do this. We simplify, then we solve. So we are going to simplify this by doing what we're taught to do. And then we'll put this back in and solve the equation. So let's back up for a second. What is this an example of? What is this an example of that we're looking at? Gary? Distributive property. And so you learned that distributive property means take the number outside the parentheses and multiply it times each term inside the parentheses. But then we need to make sure we write it correctly. So we have a -6 times 2 times x. So what do we get as a result of that? -6 times 2x. Got some hesitant hands. This is where a lot of my students get confused because now all of a sudden we're multiplying. Rashida? Yeah, we got -12x. What about -6 times 3? What do we get as a result of that? Yadesh? -18. But we don't write plus -18. What are we supposed to write instead? Danae?
You write -12x minus 18.
Very good. Plus a negative really means subtract. So we're going to put minus 18, and you're going to see why that's important in a moment. Excuse me. So now, that was just simplifying distributive property. So now let's bring back the hidden piece. And so now, how many steps do we have left? Chris? 2. We have 2 steps left. So again, this is now the 4th one you're doing. You should be feeling quite a bit more confident now than you were earlier. If you were a level 8 before, you should be feeling like level 9. If you were a level 6 before, you should be feeling like 7 or 8. So we draw our T. What's the first step in solving? What's the first step in solving? Remember, we simplified, now we're solving. Joe Alley, what do you think the first step is? Yeah, we add 18 to both sides. Used 5 words. Outstanding. Add down. This disappears, and we've got -12x equals what? equals what? Kivan? 60, very good. And what is the final step to solving? Mia? Beautifully said again. 5 words. Divide both sides by -12. This disappears, and we are left with x equals what? X equals what? Kian?
-5.
-5. Very good. So now, before I really just move on to the next question, I want to check. And with distributive property, it's actually even easier to check your answer. Plug in a -5 right here. 2 times -5 is -10. -10 plus 3 is -7. -7 times -6 is 42. So I know, I don't just think, I know I have the correct solution. Does anyone have any questions on how we went about this? So what was the phrase of the day? Could someone remind us? What's the phrase of the day? What's the phrase of the day, Valerie? Simplify, then solve. So going from here to here was simplifying, then we solve. Any questions? Good, let's do one more. Make sure we work out any issues with positives and negatives, etc. But now that you've seen it once, everything you've experienced, you should feel like you have a good idea of what to do at this point. So I'm not saying where to look or what to do, so just tell me, what's the first action you should take? What's the first step? Go ahead, Briante.
Multiply 11 by 2 and 4x by 2.
Good, and what's that called?
Should not be.
Distributive property. So yeah, you should be able to scan through the equation and know immediately what to do first. We're going to distribute. So we're not going to use the 38, so we're just going to say 38 equals 2 times 11, well we could do that mentally, minus 2 times 4x is 8x. Now we have two choices. It kind of depends on how comfortable you are. My students who are level 9s from the homework, from the last lesson, if you're a level 9, you could probably just go right from here. You probably know that that's a positive 22 and that's a negative 8x. But if you were like me in 7th grade and I needed a little more guidance, you might want to use the commutative property to rewrite the equation so that we take this and commute it over here so that things are a little more clear. I leave it up to you to decide what's best for you. So I would personally rewrite it 38 equals negative 8x plus 22 because I don't want to get confused with that. But again, by level 9s, you probably don't need to do that. I leave it up to you. Now we're ready to solve. So, what's the first step in solving? First step in solving, Mike? Very good. Subtract 22 from both sides. That disappears, and now we've got 16 equals negative 8x. That was one step. What's the second step? What's the second step, Sebastian?
Divide -8 from both sides.
Divide both sides by -8. That disappears, and we're left with x equals what? X equals what? Alex? -2. And now I can check. This one I can check really quickly. Plug a -2 right there. -4 times -2 is positive 8. 8 plus 11 is 19. 19 times 2 is 38. Any comments or questions on how we accomplished our goal? Any comments or questions? Okay, let's see how you do on your own. Checkpoint number 2. Got a minute and a half. Go. colored pens. What do we get? Start with Mia, Ezekiel, Caesar, Isabella, Rashida, Selena. Go.
X equals negative 2.6.
Okay.
X equals negative 11.
Okay.
X equals negative 11.
Okay.
X equals
Okay. Go ahead.
X equals
There seem to be
What is
a few people. It was negative 11.
X equals negative 3.
X equals negative 3. We got some more people who seem anxious. Joali and then Chanel. Okay, more support for that answer. Chanel. X equals more support for negative 11. Kevon. Seems to be leaning more towards.
Oh, I told all of you.
X equals negative 11. So, clearly we have some issues to work out with this question, but let me survey to see how we did. Give me a thumbs up if you got it right. You got it. Okay, put your thumbs down. It was more than half, but still got to figure out where we went wrong. But here's where I'm going to give my little speech again. You should have known it was wrong. Because look, if I put a negative 3 right here, that's negative 3 plus 7 is 4. 4 times negative 5 is negative 20. So it doesn't work. So if you put negative 3, you should have known it was wrong. I'm not saying you should have been able to figure out the right answer, but I'm saying you should have known it was wrong. So, how do we get to the negative 11? Where's my thumbs up, people? What did we... Okay, Yudesh, what's the first step?
Negative 5 times 7.
Good. And what's that called? Yeah, distribute. Distribute. You can just say distribute. We'll all know what you mean. So we're not using the 20, so we'll rewrite the 20 equals negative 5 times x is negative 5x. Negative 5 times 7, what do we get there? Danae?
Negative 5 times 7 is negative 9.
Very good, but you were really good before. How do I write that? Because there's a plus sign here. Do I write plus negative 35? Do I write it like...
Minus 35.
Yeah, you had helped us out before with that. Is that we don't write plus a negative, we write minus 35. And now it's in a format that we're very used to. So was that an issue? Did you write plus and negative 35? So you got to here? Okay, so draw your T.
Only the 5x plus 3.
So you forgot the negative sign. Okay, and that's an understandable mistake, but one that we need to avoid. So Ezekiel, what's the next step here?
So add 35 to both sides.
Very good, you said that beautifully. Add 35, add 35. This will disappear. Here's a danger zone. Don't forget that that's a negative 5 when you rewrite it. That one detail is critical. So it's negative 5x equals 55. Now divide both sides by negative 5 and you get x equals negative 11. Okay? Mia, were you able to find your mistake? No, it's not something to apologize for. It's just want to make sure you're catching your own mistakes. Remember the activity we did last time where we switched roles?
Yes.
And you were the teacher and I was the student?
Yes.
Well, now you have to be the teacher for yourself. That's why I asked Mia if she found her own mistake, and she immediately said, yeah, I know what I did wrong. Because she's being the teacher for herself. And that's what I was trying to help you see. Okay? Does anyone have any further questions on checkpoint number 2? So now, we want to be able to take all of this, and we don't want to just be able to solve an equation. In and of itself, it's really not that big a deal. We want to be able to solve problems. So, here's an example of the type of problem that you might need to solve depending on your life's work, your career, whatever. So, find the value of x in the figure. So don't worry about writing this instruction, but we do need that the perimeter is 52 units and we need the picture. So take 30 seconds to write that down. Now, we've been working on an outline of things to look for every time. But we have to modify it a little bit because this is a geometry type question. It's not the same as like the question during the warm-up. So, yeah, we could write down total and rates and flat fee and all of that, but it's not going to really apply because there's no rate and there's no flat fee when you're talking about a shape. But the first thing that I ask you to find does apply. What is the total in this scenario? You have to think about it. You have to understand what the words mean. What's the total, Jedley? Yeah. What does the word perimeter mean again? Someone try to remind us in some kind of everyday language. Gloria? You said that beautifully. It's the distance around. So when you think of the word total, total distance. So we're talking about the distance from here, 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 and all the way back. So the total is 52, and so that does help guide us on what we're going to do. Because as I've taught you, the total can always go to the right. So if we put the 52 all the way to the right and put our equal sign, then we can focus on what has to add up to 52, or what do we have to put down to get to 52. So Gloria basically just told us, what do we need to do to get to the 52? Go ahead, Gloria, you're on a roll. Right, but based on the picture, what's going to go over here?
Okay, you can do 9 times 2 because 8.
It's what?
Because there's 2 8 inside.
Good. So the 9 is going to be over here as well. That's very important. What else? Yeah, go ahead, Gloria.
And then do the same thing with the x plus 6.
Very good. So the x plus 6 is going to be up here as well because, as you said, definition of a rectangle, these are equal sides. But now we can get the distance around. How do we get a distance around? What operation do we need to do for that? Kiana?
You add all the sides.
Add all the sides. So add all the sides. Well, you can start anywhere. It doesn't matter. So let's start with the 9. 9 plus. So we got that side. Now this side. X plus 6. So we took care of this side and this side. Now we need that side. Plus 9. Now we need this side. Plus x plus 6. So all of that has to add up to 52. That seems pretty complicated. But watch what happens. Kiana, you had something to add?
Yeah, but that you're not supposed to put it that way.
Why not?
Because it's supposed to be x plus 6 is supposed to be 9, and x plus 6 in a parentheses equals 52.
Well,
Well, you know the way that you put it, it's 9, and then the parentheses, inside the parentheses are x plus
so you're suggesting multiplying. 9 times. You're talking about distributive property. So that would be area. If we were going to calculate the area, you're right. That's what we would have to do. But this time we're talking about perimeter. And as Gloria said, we just have to add up all the sides. So there is another way to do it, but this is the simplest way, simplest approach. But this looks like a mess. So what should I do at this point? Chris?
Simplify and solve.
Simplify then solve. You said the phrase of the day. So give me the first thing to simplify.
9 plus 9 plus 9 equals 18.
9 plus 9 plus 18?
1 plus 9 equals 18.
Oh, is that it?
And then x plus x plus
Wait, what?
I don't know, you're the one talking. You said x plus what, and then you asked yourself what?
Okay, it's 2x plus 12. Okay, that's how you get it. It's x plus 6 plus x.
Okay, well you're overthinking it.
What?
Let me, here, hold on a second. Put your hands down for a second. I'm going to use yellow to highlight the first set of like terms. Am I done highlighting the yellows, Isabel?
You can do 9 plus 6 plus 9 plus 6.
Yeah, these are all like terms. 9 plus 6 plus 9 plus 6 is all like terms. So when we add those together, what do we get? Yadesh? You get 30. So our equation, we've got a 30 here. And then what else do we have to simplify? I'll use a different color to highlight. What are my other like terms that I can simplify? Danae?
Wait, no.
X? Just
But yeah.
Just that?
No. We have to be like x plus 30 equals 52.
X plus 30 is 52? I feel like I'm missing something. Michael?
X plus x.
Yeah, there's another x. So we have x plus x, and I think Chris was trying to say that, although it got a little hidden by his little breakdown that he had. 2x plus 30 equals 52. Wow, look at that. This complicated looking equation was not complicated at all. It was just a two-step equation hidden behind stuff that was not simplified. So how many steps do we have left? How many steps do we have left from here, Alex?
2.
2. So we draw our t, and we solve. So this was simplifying, now solve. At this point, it should be a 30-second process. You should know exactly what to do. You subtract 30 from both sides. You get 2x equals 22. Divide both sides by 2. And you get x equals 11. Does anyone have any questions? I know I went quickly there, but the focus was really on this part here and how to get from the picture to here. Does anyone have any questions? Jedli?
Well, I revised it and I put everything back and then I added everything and when I put in 11, it turned into 42.
Okay, let me take a look and see what you did. Okay? But I'm glad that you tested it out. That's very smart. Okay? So what he did was he's saying he tested it out, he put the 11 here, and it didn't come out to 52. So we're going to check that. Okay? All right. Draw a line across your paper. Your classwork is page 127, numbers 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Number 9 is broken down into 4 parts. You have to do all 4 parts.
Hey, you know that trend, like, when you used to like try to see that math spelling. That's more It's still recording, Selena.
Good try, but
How you You just saw one on I'm just You can try out. Yeah, we're very sorry. We have very serious conversations in this class.
okay, colored pens up. Here we go. Now, I expected you to be successful on 3 through 7. Number 8 was an extra challenge. If you got it right, fantastic. If you didn't, then that's one I don't need you to worry about yet. Number 9 had 4 parts. You were to do all 4. Now, the first one, the publisher did it in a slightly more advanced way. I think that's kind of overkill. So I would have done, if you did it this way, then you're a level above my expectation, and that's fantastic. I would have just written down, just the same way we did the example. 10 plus x plus 2 plus 10 plus x plus 2 equals 28. So that's really what I was looking for, but if you did this, that's fantastic. When you solve either of them, it doesn't matter what equation, whichever way you wrote it, x comes out to 2. But then we go a step further, and we're asked, well, what's the width of the rectangle? If x is 2, you plug it in there, 2 plus 2 is 4. So the width of the rectangle is 4 in this case. And then you were asked to check, and what you should have done was plug the 2 into your original equation. So if this was your original equation, you should have plugged the 2 right there. If you had the more simplified form of it, then you plugged in the 2 for everywhere there's an x, and you should have figured out that it worked. Okay? So if we count each question separately, we've got 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 questions. So if we get a score out of 10, 8 out of 10 or better would be a pretty good starting place. So, comments or questions on any of these? We'll start with Danae and then Gary.
How do you actually do it? How do you do it?
Number 8, good. So, I kind of set up number 8 with the question during the warm-up. There was the last question on the warm-up was something that looked exactly like that. And so what was the little idea that I tried to get across during the warm-up? There was one idea that I said you had to pay attention to. Chris?
Positive 2 and that's distributive property.
Right.
I think I just know it live.
Okay. Okay, good. So what has to be done first? That was the key. Is distributive property has to be done first. And so you distribute first, and as Chris just said, we ignore this for a moment. So we're not going to use it yet. We can just bring it down to the next line. 2 times x is 2x. 2 times 2 is 4, but it's minus 4. And then we bring back this part equals 19. Now we've seen something that looks like this before. We have like terms. A 5 and a negative 4. What do we get when we add 5 and negative 4? Isabel? 1. So these disappear, and we end up with 2x plus 1 equals 19. How many steps will it take from here? Yadesh? 2 steps. I don't even need to do them anymore. You should be so good at it from this point forward. Should be easy. Okay? Comments, questions on number 8? Okay, Gary?
No, I'm stretching.
Oh, okay. Questions on anything else? Any questions? Okay, draw a line across your paper. Your homework. It's page 127, numbers 12 through 20 even. Then you're doing 34, 36, and 54. That's a total of 8 questions. And you have a quiz next week that will be 3.1 to 3.3, which of course we haven't gotten to yet, but by the end of next week we will.